Well, hello, everyone. Welcome as we are coming to you live from our quarantine studios here around Missionary Baptist Church. Pastor Connor here with the senior pastor of Brown Missionary Baptist Church, Pastor Bartholomew Orr. Pastor Orr, how's it going? How you doing?
Hey, Damon is going well, and despite the positive COVID test earlier today, and interestingly, people might not realize this, but all last year we talked about this possibly happening, and what we could do and what would go on in the event that I came down with COVID.
Yes, you have been talking about it, and I think you kind of gave a before telling when you said it on Sunday. You was like, not if, but when.
I'm like, oh my goodness. I said everybody's gonna go back now and digest everything I said Sunday. but yeah, and I really believe that, Damon, that this is one of those things that is so contagious that if you are out and about, they have oftentimes told us that vaccinations would not prevent us from just getting COVID, but it does help minimize the all of the symptoms. And so I am grateful that what is it? Probably starting Sunday evening when Trey tested positive to now, other than sinus drainage, I'm doing pretty well.
Well, that's great, and I'm grateful to hear that. I'm sure everyone is, and with information that's set out early today, it did send the buzz happening everywhere. But we're grateful that you're doing well. How's your family doing at this time?
You know what? In terms of the family, so right now in the Orr household, Valerie is the only one that is negative. So Trey positive. Two of my sons who were here for Christmas, Bradford and Brandon, they're dealing with it as well, and myself. And actually, Bart tested positive this morning as well. And so, other than that, everybody else, Valerie's the long. She was able to skate through this one so far. So y'all keep praying for Valerie.
So she's the lone negative survivor.
Damon, when Trey started running the fever, I, being the brave one that I am, said, I'm going to leave Trey with you so I can go off as another part of the house to stay well. And so even in the midst of taking care of Trey, God has preserved and kept her safe. So to
That's
God be
good.
the glory.
Well, look, and I'm glad everyone is happy to be able to see you smile and see you that everybody is well. At this time, how Pastor Orr, how is your family? What can we do as members, as the
Oh
community?
my goodness.
Uh,
Well, let me just say, pray. Okay, I've been getting a lot of text messages. Which way is the phone? I've been getting a lot of text messages. And Miss Caroline, I just got yours, Mother Caroline. But I appreciate everybody praying for us. The staff has been wonderful, hanging in there with me, going and picking up whatever I need, dropping off. So you all already know we are a eat out restaurant family, and so everybody's been taking great care of me. So if everybody would just pray, I would greatly appreciate that. And I see my favorite doctor is joining us as well. And I think he was probably my well, no, he was my second call even before the test to let him know, hey, this is what I'm thinking, and let's start talking through the what ifs.
Hey, and look, we are excited. Again, we're at the BMBC Quarantine Studios. We have Dr. Blakeney with us. Dr. Blakeney, we appreciate you being here, and we thank you for all the service you provide for the community, but also for our pastor, for our church. How are you doing on this evening?
I'm doing fine, doing fine. I appreciate the invitation to discuss the latest situation in terms of Pastor Orr, and I'll be glad to, answer any questions regarding just COVID in general.
So with
Look, hey Damon, and we talked about, you asked, is there anything we can do? I did have one special request, and that was to Dr. Blakeney. I said, look, tell Taneely I'm going to send Valerie over to help out in one of the rooms at the Blakeney Manors. But I figured I could ask them since I married them. How many years ago now, Dr. Blakeney?
I'm going on 21.
Oh
yeah.
my goodness.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Oh wow. Well, Dr. Blakeney, look, people have questions, so I guess we can kind of start from kind of entry level, and then we can work our way through some other things. But as it relates to the COVID-19 and all these strands, with what are some of these symptoms that people are getting that they need to be aware of if they are feeling sick at this time?
Okay. Well, with COVID being a viral illness, there's a lot of overlap with sinus issues, even with flu. But some of the most common symptoms for COVID specifically are cough, body aches, and headache, which again could be for a number of things, but also some of the things that are not as common to some of the other viruses, like diarrhea, loss of taste or smell, or alteration of your sense of taste or smell, sore throat, and fever. But also one of the big ones is shortness of breath, because that can be a hallmark to some of the more severe symptoms and complications from COVID, namely pneumonia. And that could either be kind of mild. I've had young patients who've had a mild case of pneumonia, and they've been able to stay home, to the full-fledged, shortness of breath, fulminant pneumonia requiring, placement on the mechanical ventilator. So, but those are just some of the symptoms that we see. And again, there's some overlap. So I usually recommend to folks where, because most people, especially in the Mid-South, we tend to have, problems with sinuses and allergies that come at certain times of the year. And, if your symptoms are a little bit different than they normally are, or you have some concern, I'd say always get tested. It's better to just get tested and know than to just kind of assume that it's your sinuses.
And that's one of the things. And let me just jump in. That list, Dr. Blakeney, believe it or not, the only thing on that list that probably was affecting me was this sinus drainage. Mm-hmm. And after preaching in 70-degree weather in December, I thought for sure, my goodness, I had sweated so every service. And Brown, thank y'all for letting me preach long this weekend. I guess the Lord knew this was going to be my last service for a couple of weeks. So let me get a couple of in. But other than the sinus drainage, I've not had headache, body ache, not the sore throat. But I do appreciate what Dr. Blakeney said. This is one of these situations where any symptoms, it really behooves individuals. It's better safe to get tested and to know your status so that you can help prevent the spread of COVID-19.
Yes, Dr. Blakeney, with that, the Omicron variant, or as everybody's been calling it, the Omarion, I know you talked about some symptoms, but what is it? I guess, how is it different from some of the other ones, and if there are some different symptoms that may be different from what you described earlier?
Well, based on studies, namely in South Africa, where Omicron that was one of the first places it was discovered. It tends to be less severe. So, we talked about pneumonia, shortness of breath. It seems to be a milder variant of COVID, in which there are a number of variants, and a lot of it kind of starts in different areas of the world, and then it, just depending on how well they're transmitted, they may kind of travel outside that region. And the Delta variant was just probably the more the nastiest one we've had to date in terms of COVID. And so and us having just really gotten through that Delta wave and seeing a rise in hospitalizations and severe illness, it became the main variant. Interestingly enough, there was a study out of South Africa that says that having the Omicron actually may protect you from Delta. So, theoretically, we're hoping that with Omicron being so easily transmissible, because that's another difference between Omicron and Delta, is that it's a higher rate of transmission. So that's why you're seeing all these spikes in cases, but not necessarily a spike in some areas of hospitalizations, because overall it doesn't cause that severe disease. So if the Omicron variant becomes a more dominant variant and it's a milder case, it's a milder variant, we may have a better chance of getting a handle on this. But of course, this is all early and theoretical, but it's there are some positives to Omicron becoming the more dominant variant.
And let me just say this too. Look, all my listeners, please go ahead and take that opportunity, hit that like button, hit that share button, because we do want this message to get out to as many people as possible. One, that I am alive and well. So don't bury me too quickly.
I'm glad you cleared that up, because
yes. Some folks who said, hey, what's going on with Pastor? But two, to really, I want to not only say what we can do to protect ourselves, but I want everybody to understand, one, the church is still open. Our activities are still going on. This is something that we have been preparing for, and taking the necessary safety precautions and the protocols, following CDC guidelines, and so this is something that every family need to prepare themselves for, and that is the possibility. And Damon, I know everybody remembers all of my sermons because my favorite members take such good notes. But I think it was like two Sundays ago, I was telling everybody, look, we need to prepare for the worst as we pray for the best. So the possibilities are out there for anyone, and I'm fully vaccinated and boosted, and still experienced a break. What do you call it, Dr. Blakeney? A breakthrough COVID case.
Yes, and I think you touched upon this earlier in the broadcast. It's never been said that being vaccinated keeps you from getting COVID. It just, number one, prevents you from having severe disease, or helps prevent serious disease. And then it also decreases the transmission of the virus. So, that doesn't mean that, you can walk maskless or even with masks and not catch the virus. It's not the end all be all, but it does, number one, prevent you from getting seriously ill. Number two, slow down the transmission of the virus. And number three, hopefully with more people getting vaccinated, we can finally get a handle on this, because unfortunately, the more people that aren't vaccinated, the more likely we're going to see more variants. Now, hopefully, we won't see anything as bad as Delta, and so hopefully with Omicron becoming the more, if it becomes a more dominant, variant, we can get a better handle on things. With Delta kind of taking over, I mean, we kind of weathered the storm there for a while and kind of got through, and then we were kind of nervous about Omicron, but it's a blessing that it isn't as bad as it could have been.
Now, Brown doesn't give medical advice, but you heard it from my doctor, and I'm in total agreement with him. Look, y'all, right now, if you're not vaccinated, please encourage your families to get vaccinated, because one of the things that I'm seeing, and y'all, literally, I'm still calling everyone on their birthday. Matter of fact, I finished all my birthday calls for today, and every day, including today, I'm getting someone that has COVID, that have been diagnosed with COVID. But here's the thing: most of the ones that that I'm hearing of in terms of passed away are people that are unvaccinated. So please let me encourage. I'm thankful that I'm vaccinated and boosted in terms of just being prepared for something like this.
Dr. Blakeney, one of the questions that come up is when.
And Damon, let me just say this. Let me cut you off. But if someone has a question, look, you can always text 901-616-1258. We'll try to get as many of your questions in as well as we are giving out this update with Dr. Blakeney.
Absolutely. And as you did kind of make that pause, the outpouring of love through the messages on the stream, we definitely appreciate everyone who is praying for
Amen.
Pastor your family, and for everyone who have COVID. So thank you all and keep putting those posts out there. Share it. This could help someone who is dealing with it or will experience it in the future. But one of the questions, Dr. Blakeney, that comes in is, when should you get tested for COVID? At what point should a person get the COVID test?
Okay. Well, first, we touched upon it a little bit earlier. If you have symptoms suggestive of COVID, definitely get tested. If you are exposed to someone with COVID, and that would be a close contact, someone that you're in close contact with, for 15 minutes, 6 feet apart, and usually that's going to be household contacts. If you come across someone who has tested positive and you're not having any symptoms and you're boosted, so you're vaccinated and boosted, you should wait about 5 days after that exposure to get tested, to give time for the test to change, because there's been a lot of talk about when you are more likely to transmit the virus, and they're saying 1 to 2 days before you have symptoms and then 2 to 3 days after symptoms. So that's where they've come up with this new 5-day rule that you're more likely able to pass it on. So you should wait 5 days after you've been exposed to someone who has COVID. If you're vaccinated and boosted, you don't have to quarantine if you and if you have no symptoms. That's the other thing, right? If you have symptoms, you should go ahead and quarantine and get tested. But if you're asymptomatic, so let's say you were over Big Mama's house and you were hugging on her and she ended up getting positive. So, and you boosted, and so you've had your 2 vaccines and you've been boosted, and you're not having symptoms. You feel fine, but Big Mama called you and she says, "Well, I tested positive," and so you wait 5 days, but you don't have to quarantine, but you have to mask. So if you're around folks and you're not quarantined and you're fully vaxxed and boosted, you have to wear a mask, and that's the common theme for whether you've been exposed or you test positive, that you have to mask to prevent transmission. So so that's the 5-day rule. And so and I think in Pastor Orr's case, he waited 5 days and then got tested, because the problem is you can get false negatives, and these home tests, and they've talked about the home testing, you can get false negatives. So it's best to kind of head out to a testing center if you've been exposed, to get the not the rapid antigen test, but the other tests.
And let me just say one, a couple of things. And that number someone just texted me. I'm glad all my favorite member has my number. Now don't all of y'all don't all have to keep texting me, but 901-616-1258 is the number. If you will have any questions, 901-616-1258. Text that number. Sunday afternoon, we did a home test on Trey, and that's when we discovered his came back positive. When we did one on the rest of us, our test came back negative. But Monday morning, here I am coming down with some sinus issues, and again thinking it was just from the Sunday weekend service. But after filling up a box with tissue, Valerie was like, you look, that's not normal sinus."
Exactly. Yes. And that's why, the home tests have their benefits and their uses, but if you've got somebody that's positive in your household, and you get a negative, you really should not rely on that test completely.
Right.
You should definitely go out and get a PCR test,
And I want to give a shout out. I do want to give a shout out to Bishop Brandon Porter in the
Okay.
Greater Community Temple Church. They are making free COVID tests available to the community. And
Wow.
so I definitely appreciate them, what they're doing for the community. They were able to get me in and out. I actually had a funeral to preach this morning, and I wanted to be certain before I went to that funeral. And Damon, let me just say this too. Again, going back to what we're saying. Look, we're doing everything possible that we can in order to keep everyone safe. But if you are having symptoms, and it's questionable whether or not you've been around people, maybe you've been out of town. Look, all of our worship services are in person and online. And I would encourage you, before you just come out and you're unsure, it's better to be sure than sorry. So go ahead and get that test. And, I went, got tests. I was actually getting dressed to come to the funeral. had sent you all my sermon notes just in case I was running late there. But I'm so thankful that even after getting my clothes on, I did get the results that, what, you're positive. So we want everyone to make sure, because that's another way that we can keep this from spreading and that we can keep other people safe. One of the things that I did want to say too, Dr. Blakely mentioned about going over grandma and them house. Look, if Lil Ray Ray is real young, been at the daycare and in and out and around people, y'all, and especially those who are unvaccinated or are too young to get vaccinated. Can I encourage you, keep them from Big Mama and keep them from others, because that's the other thing that I'm hearing. I don't know if you're hearing this as well, Dr. Blakely, but children are really having to spread this quickly.
Yes, that's true. They're seeing a huge spike in hospitalizations and cases in kids. Fortunately, not many kids get severe illness, but to your point, kids are getting it. And most kids live in a household with, if not one parent, two or several generations. So you definitely have to keep that in mind, especially if your children aren't vaccinated. And so just and back to the exposure and all the, when you talk about unvaccinated people being exposed, you have to quarantine for 5 days and get tested before you can come on out, because either if you're unvaccinated or if you haven't completed the series, they're actually treating you like a unvaccinated person. If it's, now if you've had both shots and it hasn't been 6 months yet, if you're not, if it's not time for the booster, then that's a different situation. But we do know that getting boosted protects a lot more against the virus than just having the 2 vaccinations alone.
And I appreciate it. There's a question. Vicky, my favorite member, Vicky, got a question. What treatment regimen would the doctor suggest? And I know you Dr. Blakely, you told me what, vitamin C, zinc, lots of liquid.
Yeah. Vitamin C, D, thiamine, zinc. These are some of the vitamin cocktails we use in the hospital for patients who've been admitted with COVID. Unfortunately, we were giving a huge push for monoclonal antibody therapy, but with Omicron becoming a new variant, there's really only one treatment that's effective, and it's not enough of it to go around. So monoclonal antibody therapy is not available right now. Right. So,
because I did call. Look, I did call my high uppers. I did call my high uppers, and of course, your pastor got. Well, that looks almost like some weed on the screen, but it's not weed.
And I saw some smoke too in the background.
Well, and the smoke that they saw earlier, it wasn't the Shekinah glory. I've actually had my diffuser going with my, with my with my oils of eucalyptus, some tea tree, lemon, pepper that.
Some of your members was going back 2 years ago when you did a Bible study on the legal barrel, all that.
When I held up the bag, huh?
Let me ask you this, for you, Pastor Orr, Dr. Blakeney, anyone who was in contact with Pastor Orr this past weekend, whether it was Saturday night or Sunday, what advice do you give, or what do they need to be doing if they was in close contact with Pastor Orr?
So, close contacts, if you're vaccinated and you don't have any symptoms, just test 5. You don't have to quarantine. Just, make sure you mask up and get tested 5 days after being around Pastor Orr. But if you're unvaccinated or you haven't fully boosted and you're eligible to be boosted, you're having symptoms, you should definitely quarantine for 5 days and get retested. And so without symptoms, they're saying mask up and just avoid and get tested for 5 days.
This was one time, Damon, I was glad this weekend. I did all of my my sanitized handshake from the pulpit, and in terms of just the sanitized hugging from the pulpit, and even Valerie was pleased that I hadn't stuck around and had a bunch of meetings with individuals. So that did work out well this weekend.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I for those that were exposed who are not vaccinated, they recommend you stay home for 5 days, but they say if you can't, just make sure you wear a mask for 10 days. Okay. So it's not as strongly as recommended if you have symptoms. And again, this is if you have no symptoms.
Hey, now is that the new 5-day recommendation?
Yes. And if anybody has any questions, you can definitely go to the CDC website, and they'll definitely explain to you, what to do, if you test positive or if you're around someone who's tested positive, and it's also based on your vaccination status.
Let me ask you this, since I have you on here, do you have any thoughts on the new guidelines from, the new quarantine periods to 5 from, I guess, the 10, 14? Anything you can share that you feel comfortable sharing on here?
So they're basing it on science, right? They're looking at all these different studies about transmissibility and rates of transmission and time and all that. I've always been one to kind of err on the side of caution, and I would probably do 10 if you're able. So in terms of quarantining and then coming out. The 5 days, again, that's based on science, and it is a recommendation. We use it as a guideline. I'm not completely sure how I feel about that completely, but I would probably err on the side of caution. So there are some medical experts who are in disagreement with the CDC and they feel like it should remain the same. I think part of this is because the CDC is trying to relieve some of the stress in terms of workforce, whether it's first line responders, even to like the NBA and the NFL, having to be out for 10 days, in some cases 14, has had a huge strain on the economy. So we always had to kind of keep that in mind. But I do feel that the CDC is trying to base this on science, and it makes sense. I'm just not so sure how I feel about it, though.
And look, Dr. Valerie said I will be out 10 days. So this was one time Valerie overrode the CDC. And there are a couple of questions, and I appreciate y'all sending these questions in. One was, and especially in terms of, let me just say this about schools are going back next week and so forth. Here's on a good note, people have been out of school for a couple of weeks. So in that regard, schools opening back up, if everyone who is symptomatic or believe they have come into exposure stay home, we can keep all of our schools safe, and we can keep our students safe. And so parents, please, if you know that you all have come into an exposure, and you know that your child is exhibiting any symptoms, please don't take any chances. Keep that child home so that others at school can be safe.
That's right.
Thank you
And
so much.
and one other um, oh my goodness, one other question that someone had asked a question about, Dr. Blakeney, and that was if they were around somebody, they were fully vaccinated, boosted, they got tested within that 5-day period, should they retest? And now my answer would be yes, retest, because I was negative when I tested within that 5-day period at first.
No, totally. Yeah, it definitely. These new guidelines are based on that 5-day transmissibility phase, and so you could have a negative test within those couple of days. So I would say you definitely need to retest, and you really shouldn't test for at least 5 days after the exposure to that person to guarantee that you're not carrying the virus.
Thank you so much. A couple of things in terms of other updates that we have. Pastor Orr, are we still doing services this weekend? Can you give us a schedule? And I think you mentioned it
We,
earlier, but
yeah,
we have a lot of people who've joined now. So, in terms of
right. Let
going
me just say, and I appreciate y'all. Look, I appreciate y'all hitting that like button, hitting that share button, and putting it out there to everyone else. I am, and especially for all of my latecomers, your pastor tested positive this morning for COVID. I am doing fine, well, no other than sinus drainage. That's my only symptom. Trey, who was the initial one in our family to exhibit some symptoms of a fever and diarrhea. Trey is batting 100, y'all. You know, hey, he was back playing drums on Monday. Wants to go outside and play basketball. My other sons are having some issues, but all of our symptoms are very mild. So I appreciate everybody praying for us. Now, in terms of the weekend, we're still doing all of our regular service times in person and online. So New Year's Eve is still happening in person, 12 noon, and at 8 p.m., 10:30 p.m. 12 noon is with Dr. Frank Ray, 8 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. with special guest Pastor Mike Jr. So all of the evening services, Saturday evening service, Sunday morning, 8 o'clock and 11 o'clock, we're still having in-person and online services. If you're like me and you're COVID positive, or you have exhibited some symptoms and you are unsure, look, I want to encourage you this weekend, become the best digital discipleship and join me online while everybody else can be able to worship safely in person. But I'm, you know, I want to say I appreciate the staff, Brown. We all the 2 years that we've been in the midst of this, we have always said this possibly was going to happen at some point in terms of me getting COVID. And so I'm thankful that God has covered me. God will continue to cover me. And Brown will continue to go on with all of our regular services. And Damon, Pastor Conley, look, we're doing everything possible. Masks are still required for all of our services, for all of our events. Social distancing as well is available. We're increasing even hand sanitizing stations around the sanctuary to make sure that coming in and going out, people are sanitizing themselves. And again, all of our worship services, our facilities are sanitized, you know, in between services. And Brown is going to be doing something even extra. And I appreciate Bishop Porter. Even before all of this happened, say, talk about God's providence. Even before all of this happened, last week I had a conversation with Bishop Porter about Brown becoming a site for free COVID testing. So in a couple of weeks, we'll be able to make that service available to North Mississippi, free COVID testing, because I do believe testing is one of the ways that we're going to drive these numbers down as people know their status. So I'm excited about that.
What about seniors and people with underlying conditions as they are thinking about coming into service? Any thoughts on that?
In my humble but most accurate opinion, look, consult your medical doctor. I think that's our politically correct statement. Consult your medical doctor. But by all means, y'all, we've been down this road many times, and we've encouraged people. It's better to be safe and to err on the side of being precaution. What would you say, Dr. Blakely?
I totally agree. Again, just reiterating, getting tested for any symptoms or any exposure. Get vaccinated. I mean, get
Yes.
vaccinated. Get boosted if you're eligible. This is the best way to get protected. If you get the virus, like Pastor Orr, he just already mentioned that he's been vaxxed and boosted, and look at him,
Fully
looks good.
vaccinated.
He looks good,
Boosted.
doesn't he? Yeah, he's so unvaccinated, you could have severe symptoms. You can end up hospitalized. And one thing I've learned in the past week, the ERs are crazy right now. And so if you do not need to go to the ER, you don't want to go. But if you need to, definitely. But part of that is because of the rising cases and the shortages of staff because of the pandemic. So get vaccinated.
Yes. This Omicron is pretty contagious, y'all. And again, we don't know where we picked it up at, but we're grateful for following all of our guidelines. And let me just say this, Brown, I appreciate all of our medical team, the doctors, our task force, because they have been walking with us through this whole entire pandemic from the third Sunday in March when Dr. Blakeney told me shut it down. So I definitely appreciate them. And as we exhibited symptoms, starting even Sunday evening with Trey, we were in direct conversation with our medical team so that we can make sure that we're following all of the CDC guidelines so that we can keep ourselves and others safe. I want to encourage you, please do the same thing. Please, please, please put that mask on. And I'll be honest, Damon, I think that's one of my that was one of my shortcomings. I got lax and started getting lax on the mask. I was walking out of CBS one day last week, and one of my members saw me, and that's the problem when all your members live in a community. And she said, "Pastor, where's your mask?" So these are times that many people have become relaxed, but this is just another reminder that this is a highly contagious disease.
Yes, it is. And look, thank you so much for your transparency, sharing that. You sent a message out this morning.
Yes.
We thank you even for getting up bright early, leading the prayer call.
Hey, look, that's right. I was doing the prayer call this morning. Yes.
And so appreciate you, Dr. Blakeney, as well for coming in with us, answering some of those questions. And as we get more questions coming in, we'll make sure that we get a response from our doctors who have been leading, as Pastor Orr said. We appreciate everyone. We thank you so much for all of your prayers for Pastor Orr and his family. Continue to pray for him, pray for his strength, pray for his family. And we are looking forward to having a great weekend this weekend.
Church is open.
Church
services are going on. Look, y'all pray for Pastor Anderson. Y'all pray for Pastor Anderson. But I'm looking forward to a great word. I was sharing with him earlier, Pastor Conley. This is my first Sunday in 33 years that I won't be preaching the first Sunday of a new year. And so I know I told Brown that I wanted a sabbatical in 2022. I didn't know the Lord was going to start me off with one. Taking 10 days off at the beginning. But God bless you. Love you guys. Love all of you, Brown. And please, again, hit that like button, hit that share button, put it out there. put this out there because I would love for the right message to get out. And so thank you so very much.
We appreciate everyone. Thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you this weekend. All right, everybody. Be blessed.
I'll be online.